Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Grid Live Pre-Race. I'm Ben Schneider, in for Joe Samniego this week, who is on site at Portland International Raceway to cover the IndyCar Series this weekend. But here on Grid Live Pre-Race, we've got a packed house for everybody. We've got Kobe Lambeth, Adam Lemeries, Matthew, Joshua, Julia, all here to discuss some other racing we've got going on, including Formula One, MotoGP, and NASCAR. As always, we want to give a special shout out to our Patreon supporters as well. Before we get started, Colin, Deshelle, Mark, and Robin, your support means the world to us, helps keep us on the air throughout 2022 and beyond to continue doing what we love here at Grid and hopefully get to do what Joe is doing this weekend at Portland a little bit more often as we look ahead to the future. But before we do that, let's go over to Kobe and give you all an update on the MotoGP race weekend thus far.
Yeah, MotoGP. They're at the San Marino Grand Prix this weekend. Jack Miller starting on the pole, and Fabio Quartararo is starting in 8 behind a bunch of Ducatis. Maverick Vinales is the only non-Ducati in the top 5, 5th place in the championship. His teammate Elijah Spargo is 10th after qualifying with 7 races left in the 2022 MotoGP season. Quartararo continues his quest for a second world championship. Pecco Bagnaia, he's looking to get another win, but he has a 3-place grid penalty. And starting with you, Julia, will Pecco make quick work of the Ducati and Vinales to get in the race lead?
I think he's able to. I think he's really determined to do it because the one thing he wanted to do, and he's done it, he wanted to be in the second row at least. He didn't want to be stuck in the third row. So presently behind Quartararo and the rest of the bikes, because it was quite predictable that Ducati is going to have the pace in Misano. And he's done what he wanted. And now his goal for the start will be to move up as much as he can to take as many positions as he can, and then just trying to drive away. We also will see how it's gonna be with the tires and the choice of the tires. We know how it ended last year when Ducati decided to go the tires that wasn't quite a good fit for the race. Both Pecco and Jack crashed. Pecco lost the championship, so it's gonna be really interesting. But for sure, he's able to do it. Well, as we know, Jack is ready for a fight. He's ready to win, especially if it's gonna be like in a damp condition, because we know he loves rain and damp conditions. But we also know that he's ready to help Pecco if it will be, crucial. Because Pecco is still fighting for the championship, even though people are saying that Fabio and Aleix are in front, and Pecco had a gap to them. He lost quite a amount of points, but in the last 3 races, he came up so much that now I would say Aleix and Fabio are quite danger for a championship because he is really in a great shape. And then there is Enea, who honestly I think he will be maybe motivated by the fact that Ducati chose him to be next to Pecco Bagnaia next year in a factory Ducati team, not Jorge Martin. So maybe he will be motivated to show himself. But for sure he's gonna fight for the win. And then there is Maverick Vinales, who for sure will try to go for a podium and even for a win. Aprilia had a great pace in the FP4, so a great race. Great race pace. So it is possible that Aprilia will be really fast in the race, not only like qualifying, because here only Maverick was able to get quite a result. Of course, he was 5th, but Pecco has a penalty from FP1, which moves him 3 places down the grid. And Aleix is nin after the qualifying, so we'll see. But they have really great race pace in FP4. Of course, we'll be able to see it even more after the warm-up. But Maverick, honestly, he is in place to fight for a podium, even for a win. But of course, Pecco is in a great shape, and he will be really determined to just move around all the other Ducatis and Maverick and just go straight for the win.
I always enjoy when Julia's on as well. Such a knowledge as well, that everything she says as well, I just completely agree with, because a million times more knowledge than I do. And I'll add a little bit to it as well, but I agree with all your points, Julia, as well. And I think as well, the one thing I love about Pecco as well is the fact that Yes, he's got this penalty for a weird decision of just, what was it, running slowly on an in-lap as well and blocking a couple of people. They were very harsh with him there, but it could have been a lot worse. It could have been a bigger penalty. It could have been a long lap penalty. We know how difficult it is to come back from that here at Misano. But I think Pecco has got a uniqueness with this circuit as well, where he can just tune into it almost and ride around with it at such a speed. We saw last year, he crashed out the last corner here, but he was dominantly leading before that happened, and he got away quite well. So Pecco starting further back, qualified second, so starts fifth, maybe sixth on the grid. I think that's definitely going to be an opportunity for him just to go straight. It's the second row of the grid, so bang, up the inside, take the lead. We've seen Alex Rins do that before this season as well, so he'll have a great lunge there. Quartararo, I can see him having a bit of a tricky weekend. He's just seemed a little bit off to me as well. I don't know what it is. I can't put my finger on it, but it's just something is wrong with Quartararo. Looking forward as well. And about the decisions as well, as you were talking about, Julie, as well, with Bastianini starting up there as well in second position, Bezzecchi coming up as well. They're going to be on the right front of it as well. I think Bezzecchi's keen to make something as well on that Mooney VR46 bike, and I'm really hoping that now that we know Bastianini's going to be on a factory Ducati next year as well, he needs to prove he can take it to the current top two riders so that it looks like the faith that Ducati have put in him is justified going into the last few races of the season. So tomorrow is going to be a cracker, and I think it'll be the best race of certainly the early part of the day. It'll be the best race because Formula One, Paul Zandvoort, does not look like it's going to be an entertaining race, judging by the F3 and the F2. So we'll have to really hope Portland's good and really hope that the MotoGP is good to give us a good start to the day before we all turn into Darlington and NASCAR.
Yeah, Josh, and we certainly hope that the San Marino Grand Prix for MotoGP is going to be quite a barn burner. And earlier this week, got some MotoGP silly season news when it was confirmed that John Mir is going to be going to the Honda factory team, a 2-year deal, and he's going to join Marc Marquez in the famed Repsol Honda. Also, Enea Bastianini is going to be joining Pecco Bagnaia. Enea would love to lead the Ducati team. Mir wants to prove a point and bring Honda back to that important top step of the podium. So how do you anticipate both Mir and Bastianini working with their teammate?
Well, me and Julie are going to record something on this some point this today before, or some point tomorrow morning before the main show of my watch along as well, just get her thoughts on it as well. So I'm keen to see what she says here, so I know how to write my wording for the scripts. But personally, I think as well, Mir against Marc Marquez, that's a strong lineup, but Honda need to make sure that Mir has a bike that is good for that's good for him too. He needs to make sure that Honda don't just favor Marquez, because when they've done that, they struggle. Because as soon as they lost Marquez in 2020, they had Alex on for a year and Bradl again, and no development there. Stefan Bradl's been their one consistent rider across 3 seasons now that Mark's been injured, and he just can't perform on that bike, and he's their development rider. Paulo Spargro's come in, had a few good slots, few good positions as well, really giving it his all, but it just hasn't worked out. So I'm thinking that could be an interesting possible championship winning if Marquez is back to full fitness, which we now know he is. He's going to do the Misano test on Monday. But a full fit Marquez and full fit Mir is looking good, as I know Julia is going to say in a few moments. And Bastianini as well against Pecco Bagnaia. To be fair, I see that being a bit of a walkover for Bastianini rather than Bagnaia, because Bagnaia, he's not very good at starting championships. He's great at the end of them when he can really get up and get the championship on. But at the start of a year, he struggles and he does crash a lot from the lead. So I think Bastianini, who had a great start to the year, was the championship leader for quite many races, but only lost out because Guinetti couldn't upgrade the bike throughout the year. And he lost out a few times as well. There was a few fumbles, yes, but Bastianini, I think, is a very good signing for Ducati. And if they can work with them together, I think next year is going to be one of the greatest seasons we've ever seen. A full fit Marquez, a full fit Yamaha team, a full fit Ducati team, Aprilia in the mix. My God, I'm looking forward to 2023, even if it will be 44 races long.
I completely agree. I honestly can't wait for the next season and to see how they all gonna perform. I am really, really excited to see the pair of Marc and Joan next season, because it's gonna be really interesting. They are both strong personalities. Let's be honest, they are both world champions, and they both are they want to perform. So this will be. I will be curious what Honda's going to do with their bike, because we all know they've been trying to change the bike to make it as available for all the riders they have as they can after the years of doing it. No, let's be honest, mostly for Mark. But also there was a situation when in some years even this bike wasn't that good as we all thought, but Mark was saving Honda, and he was the only one who could get a championship on that bike, and he's been saying, I did it this year, but you need to help me if I'm gonna do it next year. So they really need to work hard to make the strong pair work, because Joan is changing the bike from Suzuki to Honda, and these are different bikes as always. So I'm really curious to see that. Honestly, also we have to see how they're gonna work out as the teammates, because this may be really interesting, as we know, especially when Mark came back and we knew his little games with Joan. When he was trying to get after him in qualifying. But they're also different people. We know Mark for being the one who just doesn't care about the others, and he's just doing his thing. Even if it's sometimes he needs a towel, he's just doing it. He just doesn't care what the other thinks of him, even his teammate. So he's gonna be focused on the job. Jean likes to, of course, talk. We know him. He sometimes likes to talk about him, moan a little about what the others are doing, but he's also really focused on the job, and he can be very consistent. Of course, now he's been honestly and unfortunately more consistent in crushing in last races. But after his championship in 2020, we know he can be very consistent in his results if he's able to. So Honda, if Mark's gonna be fit and Jean will be able to ride on this bike, they may be really back in the championship. And maybe just as Fabio is excited about having Mark back, that he can help him to, to compete with the Ducatis, because that's what he said in the press conference. So everyone has been laughing that they did not expect Fabio to just, team up with Mark, because we know they like each other in private as people, but team up on the racetrack to get to the Ducatis, it can be interesting. And with the Ducati, it will be very interesting. I think Bastianini is a really good choice. He's a really good choice, even though for the some time I think they're really gonna choose Jorge. Honestly, yeah, I'm completely agree with what Josh said, that Bastianini is great at the beginning of the season. Pecco has some problems, but then he's just growing through the whole, and at the end he is the strongest rider on the grid, as we've seen last year when Fabio was in really serious problems at the end, and he couldn't be sure he's gonna get this championship. If Pecco won in Misano the second race, he didn't crash, I think he would have been a world champion, because in Portugal and Valencia, Fabio had an awful performance. Bastianini, I think he'll be good on this bike. But I'm curious to see his relationship and working with Pecco, because we know Jack Miller is a team player, really. But Bastianini, I think he'll want to show that he deserves it. He'll want to fight for as many victories as he can. He'll want to fight for the championship. And he's very, he's young, and I'm really, really happy to see them, in one team, and I'm really curious to see how they're going to perform.
And Julia, the one thing I do want to ask you though is that with everything stacking up the way it is for 2023, is it now become a thing where we just can't predict who the champion's going to be? Like coming into this year, we knew that Quartararo would be strong. We knew Ducati would be better with their engines as well. Going into next year, I don't have a clue who's going to be in contention as well, because everyone's nicking the best bits of everybody else. So have you got a personal favorite that could be like an early starter for a championship?
Well, honestly, if I had to say for sure, I have no clue. Just as you, I'm thinking like, I have no idea, because Ducati is strong, but next year is maybe as well be Honda who will get good with the bike. In my Yamaha may change something finally. We have Aprilia in a really good shape this year. They are already able to fight for the championship, and now that Mavericks Vinales is growing, next year they may be just a monstrous team to fight for the championship. Maybe even the favorites, honestly, but this is still unpredictable, especially with the lineup changes that we have another Aprilia team and Oliveira and Fernandez are going to be there. We don't know if someone's from Moto2 gonna come up to MotoGP. Honestly, I have no clue who's totally the favorite for the championship. I think which makes MotoGP even more exciting for next year.
Yes, it's always really, really exciting when you have no idea what's gonna happen, and we've seen time and time again in motorsports when we come to certain races or even certain series, we already know who's going to win. Kind of like this weekend in Zandvoort, it looks like it could be another Max Verstappen show, and if he doesn't win, it's gonna be a massive disappointment. But heading into next MotoGP season, lots of unpredictable things happening, so it could be quite a barn burner in 2023. And as we all know, Fabio Quartararo is still leading the points over Aleix Espargaro and Pecco Bagnaia, who's really on a hot streak lately, racking up all those wins on a row. And despite the lack of horsepower on the Yamaha compared to Ducati, Fabio has proved time and time again that it isn't a disadvantage for him at all. And Julia, how much longer can Fabio Quartararo carry the Yamaha team on his back? And are there any tracks where Yamaha may have ultimately the better bike?
It's hard to say for how long Fabio is going to be able to, drag Yamaha with him, because that's what he's doing now. I've seen Dobby, who's retiring after this weekend. He just can't do anything on this Yamaha. Of course, he came from Ducati. Yamaha is different than he ridden it in the early years of 2020s. But honestly, I have no idea, because we've seen Mark dragging Honda with him for quite a long time. He was able to do that, but it also depends on how this Yamaha's bike going to perform, or mostly easily and honestly said, how bad it's going to be. Because if it's going to be terrible, I'm afraid even Fabio Quartararo won't be able to do anything with it. And just like, of course, we can kind of compare this to Mark, because Mark came after the injury. He's still not fully fit. He never has been after 2020. So we can compare to his problems with Honda's bike, because also the bike was new. But Fabio has proven himself as a great rider and complete rider, because he does not have a greatest machine on the grid, but he is able to win races. He is able to be a championship leader, and he can, even if the track is bad for Yamaha, for him, if he has some problems, he's even able to fight for the podium, to like drag it all with him, which is just amazing. But I'm not sure how long he's able to do that. For sure, Yamaha has to improve the bike. They're trying. We've seen Franco Morbidelli doing better this weekend. Maybe it's a sign that something changed in him, because also it was the thing with Franco Morbidelli. After this knee injury, he wasn't able to be fully committed to racing during the weekend. But maybe it's also a sign that Yamaha found something that is able to fit other riders, not only Fabio. But for next year, just like Honda, and maybe Honda a little harder, but also then they need to work really hard to make this bike, maybe not even for everyone, because we've seen that after the situation when only one rider is able to ride the bike, it's hard to make it available for everyone. So to make it good, at least for Fabio next year, they need to really work hard, because even Fabio has problem with these bikes, but he's able to overcome it quite well. I mean, he also has some problems like this weekend. It's not really a good track for him, but it's going to be a really hard task. And I don't know, for the tracks, I don't think Aragon is going to be good for Fabio, just like last year. Yamaha wasn't really performing that. It was the venue of Ducati, of Pecco and his first win, and for Mark. And they've been saying that Mark is going to be back for Aragon, because he was declared fit for the next week Misano tests, and that he wants to be back for Aragon and for the others. But I don't know, maybe one of the Asian tracks, maybe Malaysia. But it's honestly with this year's Yamaha, it's really hard to say which track would be really, really good for them, and that may give them advantage over Ducati. It just has honestly the best bike on the grid right now.
I completely agree. And we know that Morbidelli's been having a lot of problems with that bike as well, because you see Quartararo lugging around and he's putting in pole positions, he's putting in race wins as well. And Morbidelli is struggling to even get out of Q1 sometimes as well. So the bike needs to be fixed. I think there's a little bit of a habit coming around, isn't there, with the Japanese manufacturers as well, the likes of Yamaha and Honda as well, and even to a little bit with Suzuki before they finally change things around, is that they seem to think that the bike is working well and it's the rider's fault for why they're under the point. That's why we've seen them go through so many different riders. Honda got rid of Alex Marquez, put him down onto the secondary LCR team. Paul Espargaro came in, hasn't worked out, so he's going now as well. As you said, Honda have not looked to see that it's just Marc Marquez's style that he's developed the bike is. Nobody else can get on that level. Carl Crutchlow even said, you try working against Marc Marquez's data. I can do that lap time, but I can't ride the bike the way Marc Marquez does. And it's the same thing on this Yamaha now as well, as the fact is that Quartararo set that bike up in such a specific way that Maverick Vinales didn't go along with it as well. He had to really struggle to fight in as well. And that's what led to the breakdown of relationship between Vinales and the team as well. And of course, we heard back in Austria last year, Maverick Vinales revving the bike, trying to kill that M1 as well, just down the start finish straight. It's a Jester just revving the life out of the engine as well. And then all of a sudden he was fired the next week and he was in a prettier shirt standing at turn 2. So there needs to be an attitude change there. They need to get it back on. Otherwise, they'll lose championships. Yes, they're winning it with Quartararo, but what happens as well, hopefully it doesn't, if Quartararo has an injury like Marc Marquez has had? Where do Yamaha go there? The bike needs to be made for both as well. It reminds me a little bit, actually, of what should be done is that what the FIA did back in 2007 with Alonso and Hamilton as well. There was a lot of rumours that there was a lot of favouritism on Hamilton's side. So the stewards put a member of the FIA in the garage to check everything was the same. Maybe we should have that in the FIM as well, and with Dorna providing someone to look over and say that these bikes should be identical and they shouldn't favour one over the other, because I think it's pretty obvious that Honda favour Marquez, Yamaha favour Quartararo, and Ducati did favour Bagnaia. Now they're starting to favour other riders and their other 40-odd bikes they've got on the MotoGP grid. So they need to build a better bike. They need to get their act together. And I think they had an opportunity this year for the engine change and the bike release to do so. Many teams fell through of that and didn't provide an update that they should have done.
And Julia, we know you have to get going soon, so we're going to do your pick a winner for MotoGP. So who you think is going to win the San Marino Grand Prix?
This is a really hard question, as we know. It also depends on the condition, the tires, and everything. But even though my heart kind of wants Maverick Vinales to finally win a race, I still think it's gonna be Pecco Bagnaia.
Yes, you still think Pecco's gonna ride that hot streak and get another victory and what's putting together a really, really strong season. We'll see if he's gonna be able to catch up with Fabio Quartararo and match his consistency at the top of the championship. So really appreciate you, Julia. Thank you for being here. Now we're gonna shift gears and talk about Formula One at Zandvoort.
Thank you, Kobe. We have 9 races remaining and 9 drivers still mathematically in the championship points battle, but one does have a commanding lead and perhaps a massive home track advantage this weekend in his home country. Max Verstappen. Okay. Max Verstappen is looking to get another win in a row here, and 2 in his home country. He took pole position in qualifying. We'll get to his run in just a minute, but first, it was not a good result for Daniel Ricciardo on the weekend, where it was announced Oscar Piastri will in fact be replacing him at McLaren next season. While teammate Lando Norris made it to Q3 and qualified 7th, Ricciardo got bounced out of Q1, ending up all the way down in 17th on the grid. So Josh, we'll go to you first on this one. Are you surprised with just how much of a gap there was between Norris and Ricciardo today?
I really was, actually, because I was considering the fact that Danny Ricciardo in the earlier practice sessions was actually delivering quite good results. I thought, this is a change of form for Danny Rick, and he might get into Q3 and start inside the top 10. Completely didn't expect him to be out and 17th on the grid as well, with Lando being in Q3. So Ricciardo doing a Ricciardo this season as well seems to be the metaphor joke that keeps coming through as well. So That's a disappointment for Danny Rick, and I think his motivation has been sapped. There was video footage going around yesterday at the end of practice too, of Danny Rick sitting down with his balaclava off as well as his helmet, and he just looks exhausted. He looks physically drained, emotionally drained as well. It reminds me a lot of what happened between McLaren and Alonso, and even to an extent what happened with other drivers in this formula as well, where they favor one driver. Again, Sebastian at Ferrari again as an example as well. They just sapped the energy out of it as well, and it's such a disappointment. And I'm really hoping that Danny Rick ends this season on a high, and if it is his last in Formula One for a long time, I hope he gets some good results and leaves with a positive attitude, because he's the honey badger. He smiles, and his smile is infectious. Hi, Josh. His smile is infectious, and I always go, oh, Danny Rick, he's going to be on next. Oh, brilliant. Let's see what he can do. And that smile's been missing for a couple of weeks now, and I do miss it. And I really, really hope that he gets a smile back on his face. And maybe he'll go to Haas as well, and maybe he might even end up at Alpine. But either way, I just hope he's in some formula next year. Who knows? Maybe the Project 91 in NASCAR has got a race for him next year. But let's wish him some positivity.
Yeah, I agree with you, Josh. I mean, it's not the same as Daniel Ricciardo having a smile on his face. It's, but we'll see what happens with him next year. You know, for my surprise, I kind of am. And you mentioned Daniel Ricciardo was really good in one of the practices. So, but to me, Lando Norris right now it is a top driver at McLaren. Even though Daniel Ricciardo won for him last year at the Italian Grand Prix in Monza. And I completely agree with. And we have a comment from Josh Plays, who says, can't get rid of Danny Rick. Yeah, I gotta agree. But it's not the same without Daniel Ricciardo having a smile on his face. And I kind of am surprised. You know, I thought Daniel Ricciardo would be up there closer to his teammates. So we'll see what happens tomorrow in the race.
Yeah, certainly wish Daniel Ricciardo the best. We know he's certainly a talented driver. I think it's just abundantly clear at this point that the tenure with McLaren, aside from that epic 1-2 finish at Monza last year, it hasn't necessarily gone the way anybody would have liked. And I think a change of scenery is definitely needed for both parties at this point. I was surprised at how large the gap was, but of course it's not a surprise that Norris was the better driver in qualifying today. He's been the driver with the upper hand at McLaren all season long, but it was kind of surprising to see just how far back Ricciardo was to not even make it out of Q1. We'll see if he can make up some spots in the race tomorrow. Now, as we mentioned, Verstappen is on pole at his home track. He took provisional pole at the end of Q3. Then others were denied the chance to beat his time when his teammate Sergio Perez spun towards the end of his lap, triggering a yellow flag in Sector 3. The Ferraris of Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz will start second and third, respectively, ahead of Lewis Hamilton in fourth and Perez in fifth to round out the top five. So, Adam, to you first on this one. Does anybody have a shot at denying Max Verstappen, or is this going to be an easy victory with what you could really say is a real home track advantage this weekend?
What color shirt am I wearing? I mean, it's Max Verstappen's home race. He wants to do good in front of his home country fans. So I see Josh has come and joined me. So I think it's obvious. I think, even though I'll say it now, and I'll share it again when it comes to pick a winner, I don't see anyone stopping Max Verstappen tomorrow in his home country. I mean, if he doesn't win, the Dutch fans are going to go crazy. They won't be happy. But is Ferrari going to be Ferrari again tomorrow, even though they have a really good qualifying? And Lewis Hamilton's up there too. So I don't see anyone denying Max Verstappen. I'm sorry, but Max Verstappen right now is called, you want to be the best? You got to beat the best. And nobody right now is beating that Dutchman.
I completely agree, and it's so annoying as well because we for just a split second this weekend as well before qualifying started. I genuinely thought we could have Mercedes 1-2. I agreed with yourself, Adam. You mentioned it. I agreed with Josh and Megan as well up in the comms box, and I thought to myself, we could just have a Red Bull off the front row. We could just see Max struggle because he had that problem in first practice with the gearbox. He only did a couple of laps in practice 2 and then again in practice 3. Megan noticed in the commentary as well that he only did one run in both quali 1 and quali 2. He did 2 runs in quali 3, but they did remove that seal on the gearbox again this morning just to check if everything was okay. So there's something still not right with that car as well, and I'm hoping he gets to the end tomorrow. But we've got the audio now from the track on the commentary as well in the background, and if Max Verstappen fails to finish tomorrow, the noise that is going to come through the headphones as well of the Dutch fans in anger and upset is just going to be unbelievable. So I'm really hoping Max gets in. It looks like he's going to. Josh says those predictions went well. Yes, they did, didn't they? But I'd just like to say, if it wasn't for Perez spinning, Hamilton would have taken pole position. That's what Mercedes have said. Toto Wolff saying that they were up on the Delta time. And coming into the last corner, Hamilton would have taken pole by about a quarter of a millisecond or something, or whatever that was. But so really strange situation. Max will probably win tomorrow, but just keep an eye out for that gearbox. Red Bull are obviously worried about it, considering they've opened the seal twice in 2 days as well. And it wouldn't surprise me if we get a check tomorrow that they've opened it up before Parc Fermé is lifted, just to make sure it's okay. If they do change it, it's an automatic 5-place grid penalty. But if the seal is broken and nothing gets changed, that's okay. They changed that rule after Massa did it a couple of years ago to help Alonso up the field in about 2012, because it helped Alonso move up a couple of positions as well to help him in his fight with Vettel. And the FIA didn't like that. So it's looking good there as well. And also, don't count out tomorrow being a good race, because we know the F2 and F3 race has been really, really boring. But I think with this strategy play, with Verstappen's problems as well, and the Mercedes looking quick, we could be in for a good race tomorrow. I'll probably eat my words, but I'm trying to psych myself up for it. And Orange as well will be all around Zandvoort.
I wonder if Christian Horner told Sergio Perez to itch his arm there and spin out and maybe get Verstappen that way.
Yeah,
I did say in the commentary that looks a bit suspicious to me. You do it at the last corner, and then I saw it, and I thought, I'm still a bit suspicious to be honest, considering I saw it, and it looks like, even Megan said, he just twists his arm the other way, as you say. So I hope it's not the truth, but it did look a bit suspicious that he spit at the last corner on a banking where you're automatically going to have to slow down. So yeah.
Well, of course, I don't want to make any baseless accusations here. I am just joking. That's a Spingate reference for the NASCAR fans to understand. But
or Nelson Piquet.
Yeah, it does make you wonder. Now, on a more serious subject, to bring it back to this morning, qualifying briefly red flag for one of the orange flares being thrown onto a racing surface. Another flare also ended up on the track during Q3. Although the smoke faded quickly enough and the flare ended up rolling off the racing surface, meaning it only required a brief yellow flag before the situation resolved itself. Now, we've heard from some of these drivers all season long about how distracting these things can be. Josh, I'll go to you first on this one. Should the FIA enforce a hard ban on the flares before tomorrow's race to prevent issues like this from happening? And what should be the punishment for anyone who throws anything onto a live racetrack?
Well, the great news is that the person who caused the red flag in Quali 2, they found that person. He was identified and he was removed from Zandvoort as well. So that person was removed from the premises as well. I'm understanding it's a ban for a year from the track, but considering Formula 1 is the only event and it's taking place a year later, so I don't think that counts. But he's not allowed into the race tomorrow as well, which is good. But it's been quite clear. The flares were banned coming into this weekend, and we've still seen fans have them as well. And because, as Josh said, never see a car end up there, though. Yeah, that's the point. Yeah. But the problem is with these flares, they are a firework, and they still have gunpowder inside them to project the flare out. Now, when the flares go off, it's quite a stable progression of the steam. But if a car runs over them, it'll hit the gunpowder as well and ignite it, so it becomes a louder bang. And with that force of intensity, yes, it's still smoke, but it's condensed in. So it could still blow something up as well and damage part of the floor, something or other, blow the front wing. So, yeah. So that's that take as well. There was 2 flares. One was at the end of qualifying 3. A brave Marshall literally hopped over the barrier, picked it up and took it back as well because it was just at the end of the pit lane. So luckily we didn't require a red flag for that. But the idiots who are throwing these on, and I'm sorry, it's just uncalled for. And I honestly say as well, why are we racing at Zandvoort? The fans are too close as well where this can happen. It's happened twice now. The racing isn't that great. Why are we racing at Zandvoort when we've got Assen, the TT Assen circuit, just a couple of hours away as well? And it is such a beautiful circuit that would be great for F1 cars. And look at Mugello, the race we had there. It was great for F1 as well. And why are we there when we've got that track? Zandvoort is a car park half the time, it seems. And we've got an Assen, which would be a great track. And it's a wide runoff area as well. So we're at the wrong Dutch circuit, to be fair. And I think we're starting to see that and understand it now as well. That it's not up to scratch. It's definitely not. And anybody throws anything onto a live racetrack, it's a life ban for me. It's a life ban. It's attempted murder. I mean, I know that's going a bit harsh, but these cars aren't going around at 25 mile an hour. They're going around at over 220 mile an hour. They are full speed. And just the littlest thing, we saw what damage a spring could do to Felipe Massa. We've seen what damage a stone can do to somebody's eye. An explosive on the circuit. It's ridiculous. Life ban if anything goes on that circuit. And it is attempted murder because it could really harm people. And I feel very strongly about it. And it's the wrong thing. They are idiots, to be fair. The drivers have been calling them as well idiots and foolish as well in the press conference. And it's just not right. It's completely not right.
Yeah, Josh, I agree with everything you said. And it's sad. It's very sad to see, a flare being tossed on a racetrack. Yeah, I know we're at Zandvoort and it's Max Verstappen's home track, but let people, the people that are there to enjoy themselves and watch the race, let them enjoy it. Plain and simple. I mean, someone throws a flare onto the track, they should get a lifetime ban from Formula One for going to any race, across the world. It's sad. It's why would people do this? I mean, you mentioned, Josh, those cars are going at over 220 miles an hour. One of those flares hits one of those cars, works, something bad is going to happen. So I'm glad that fan, got kicked out of Zandvoort, but banned for a year? No way. It should be a lifetime not returning to Zandvoort or any F1 track. That's scary. That is sad to see. And, the fans that are there to enjoy it, let them enjoy it. And I'll agree, Josh. I think we should be at Austin as well. That track is nice. It is beautiful. And F1 at Austin, I'll take it.
I completely 1000% agree with both of you. There's absolutely no place for anybody throwing anything onto the racing surface as it's a live track and cars are going by. And Josh, you bring up an excellent point as well. We've seen the damage that small, seemingly harmless things can do, let alone these flares and the damage that they could theoretically cause if they end up in the wrong place at the wrong time. Of course, anywhere on the racing surface is the wrong place at the wrong time. And I also agree, nothing short of a lifetime ban is acceptable. Those fans, quote unquote fans, I'm not even going to give them the decency to call them real fans if they're doing things like that. They need to be thrown out for life, and not just from the track from which they threw the flares onto the track. They need to be banned from all Formula One events for life. I know some people may think that's a little bit harsh, but it needs to be able to send a message to people that this is absolutely not okay. And the only way to do that is to ensure it never happens again by keeping those people outside of a track for the rest of their lives. So hopefully, keep your fingers crossed we don't have any issues with that on tomorrow's show or during tomorrow's race. We'll recap it on tomorrow's show, of course. And Josh, speaking of the shows, I know you've got a lot of stuff going on this weekend as well as we wrap up our IndyCar coverage and continue to cover all the different series we cover here at Grid Network. I want to give you a chance before you head off of this show right now. What's your one shining moment, or what's your winner? I do the encore show, okay? I'm not usually on the pre-race show. I'm getting tongue-tied here. What's your pick a winner for Formula One, MotoGP, IndyCar, NASCAR, anything you want to throw out this weekend? What's your pick a winner right now?
I'll take a one shining moment as the fact that the checker flag was ended that horrible F2 race, to be fair, which was boring as anything. So
we'll recap that on the encore show on Monday as well.
It'll be the quickest that we've ever done. We'll just mention the results and that's it. The F1 pick a winner, I think it'll have to go Max Verstappen. I'll be very surprised that doesn't happen. So you'll probably see my face like this if it doesn't happen. MotoGP, I think will be Enea Bastianini. And I haven't kept up with NASCAR at the moment for this weekend, which is unusual because I thought I was going to be on the call. But I'll leave that in your capable hands coming up next as well. I will still be around, but you won't see me because I'm going to stay in the calls that we can use it later on for our commentary of the IndyCar quali, which you can see on the Grid Network after it's done on the live stream, because IndyCar get a bit fussy about what we do live. So we'll be live on the YouTube channel of mine, and then you can see qualifying here straight after because we'll upload the video. So that's going to be a lot of fun. And guys, I'll see you in a couple of hours. Have a great rest of the show. And I know Matthew's going to come in and replace me now as well. So have a good night and see you soon.
Thank you, Josh. And of course, I misspoke. We have a separate IndyCar pre-race show tomorrow, so we'll give all our picker winners then.
Yeah, I'm hosting. Am I still hosting? I don't know if Kobe's going to nod his head or shake his head, but I don't know if I'm hosting that or not. So that's going to be
We'll get all that sorted out. Everybody stay tuned. And we've got plenty of coverage for you all the rest of this weekend. So make sure everybody's staying tuned for that. But Josh, we'll let you go off and get prepared for some of that stuff right now. And thanks again for joining us for the beginning of the show today.
Pleasure as always, guys. See you later.
All right. Well, we'll get Kobe back in here, and then we'll bring Matt in as well, and then we'll go on to the NASCAR section.
Yeah, ready to talk some NASCAR, and hopefully Matthew hasn't fallen asleep yet since it's been a while since the very introduction of the show. But getting into the nitty gritty, the 2022 NASCAR Cup Series playoffs kicks off with the Cookout Southern 500 at Darlington Raceway, one of the oldest races in NASCAR history, and a crown jewel race that everyone wants on their resume. But 16 drivers will be looking for a lot more. A win here means you can rest easily for the next couple of weeks because they'll advance out of the round of 16. The opening round of the playoffs includes Darlington, Kansas, and Bristol. Kind of weird seeing Kansas so early in the playoffs. But Chase Elliott begins the postseason as the points leader with Joey Logano in second. And the last time NASCAR was at Darlington earlier this year, Logano made the headlines when he knocked William Byron out of the way for the win. Byron wasn't happy at all, but he hasn't gotten payback yet for the incident. Maybe William Byron's been saving that for a moment just like this. And it leads you to ask, what are drivers willing to do, especially with a golden opportunity to win in advance to the round of 12? And time again, we've seen what drivers are willing to do by getting aggressive and using the bumper. And before I ask the question, Josh Blade said that gearbox before Verstappen's retirement, and Dutch fans will scream. Yeah, I feel like that's the only way that Max Verstappen is going to end up not winning at Zandvoort. It seems like it's certainly his race to lose. And first question in the NASCAR section goes to you, Adam. Could the finish of the Southern 500 see aggressive driving similar to the end in between Logano and Byron in the spring race, especially with the stakes being so much higher now?
Oh yeah, Kobe. When you think about this race, the Southern 500, you mentioned it's a crown jewel event. Think about the list of names that have won this event in the past. Cale Yarborough, Ned Jarrett, David Pearson, Bill Elliott. Heck, he won $1 million in 1985 for winning 3 of the 4 crown jewel races that year. Jeff Gordon, Jimmy Johnson, and last year it was Denny Hamlin. So you win here in the Southern 500, you can. It's a huge win on your resume in NASCAR. And could we see aggressive driving tomorrow? Oh yeah, absolutely. I think we're going to see the bump and run tomorrow a lot. And also, you mentioned these next 3 weeks are gonna be critical. You have this race at Darlington. Next weekend we go to Kansas in the fall, and then after that, a Saturday night under the lights primetime showdown at Bristol. So you want those playoff points really badly, and you'll do anything to get them. So if you haven't got your popcorn ready and snacks, you better get them now, because tomorrow night's Cookout 7500 is gonna be a good one.
Oh, and yeah, I'm still here, by the way, everyone at home watching this. But I definitely agree with Adam when I think this is going to be a very aggressive race from all the playoff drivers. However, I don't think it's really going to be between Byron and Logano. I think it's anyone against Chastain. I think now is the time that people are going to come back at Chastain throughout this entire year, because Chastain, I think, is very capable of having an outstanding playoff run. But at the same time, he's one of those guys like Logano who has not received payback for what they had done in the previous races. I mean, you could say Chastain has a little bit, but nothing near what the capability of these drivers can be. Hi, Josh, by the way. So I think it's going to be very aggressive. I think we're going to see similar situations, but I don't know if it's going to be Byron and Logano this time out. Byron's not really the best at Darlington. He had a great race in the Gordon throwback, and then Logano, what I think still to this day was a clean move. I mean, you got to do what you got to do in this sport. They know we almost saw Ryan Blaney miss the playoffs without getting a win. So you need that win, and Logano needed to get that win. And Byron's lucky that he had 2 wins earlier on in the season, or else he'd be in a very terrible predicament for him in that 24, and he still might be. So to answer the question, yes, it's going to be an aggressive race. I think you got to get the popcorn ready no matter where the popcorn's from. And I think you got to sit back and enjoy the show.
Yeah, the 500 is always quite a show, and I'm actually really happy that Cookout is sponsoring this race, because it just announced in my small town of Reesville, North Carolina, we're finally getting a Cookout after so many years of asking. So I'm looking forward to putting on 10 pounds and having a lot of milkshakes. So that's going to be really nice. And if you're not from the South and haven't had Cookout, whenever you come down here, the first thing you need to do is to get you a Cookout tray, because it's cheap food, it's really delicious, and it's just so wonderful. And getting back to the racing itself, speaking of William Byron, a lot of people expected him to take a big step in his career this year. In some respects, he has taken that step with 2 wins at Atlanta and Martinsville, but things haven't been smooth sailing for him since his last victory in the spring at the Paperclip. Since winning the Martinsville night race back on April 9th in the springtime, Byron has only finished in the top 10 once, at Sonoma on June 12th, towards the beginning of the summer, and now we're nearing the end of summer, and he hasn't had a single top 5 finish since Martinsville. We saw how strong Byron was running last time at Darlington. He had a fast car in contention for the win, but he doesn't have the result to show for it. Ben, is this the race William Byron gets back on track, or do you expect his struggles to continue?
Well, first of all, Kobe, you're making me hungry. I think the northernmost Cookout is somewhere in Maryland, about 2 hours away. So it's a little bit out of my way to try to get to one, but I completely agree. I have visited there when I've been in the South, and everybody should get to one if it's within driving distance for them. But getting back to Byron here, that 24 team is really kind of fallen off a cliff, Kobe. Like you mentioned, it's been a tremendous struggle for them. Only one top 10 since they've won in the beginning of April. And think about how long ago that was in the season. And when they started the season with 2 wins very quickly, it looked like the 24 team was really starting to come into their own. Byron might be a championship 4 contender. The way he's been running recently, it's going to take a miracle for him to get into the championship 4. Now, we do have Martinsville coming up in the playoffs, as we do Talladega. So those are a couple of races where Byron's won earlier this season. And of course, Talladega is always a wild card. You can expect anybody with reasonable speed to work the draft right and find their way to victory lane there. So there are some opportunities for him in the playoffs to get back on track and maybe win to advance into the next round. I don't see that happening here in round 1. I think the goal for Byron needs to be to survive round 1, go to a couple of tracks where he might have a better shot in later rounds in the playoffs, and that's how he's going to advance. I don't think that team is strong enough to go back to Darlington this weekend and make a complete turnaround just like that. Real quick, Josh is saying going to get popcorn for tomorrow night after a busy and tiring weekend for motorsport. There's certainly a lot going on this weekend, Josh, so make sure you stay tuned to all of that as well, not just the NASCAR stuff. But getting back to Byron, that's what I think he has to do. I think it's going to be a matter of survival and just trying to not finish horribly, try to pick up a couple of top 10s here and there, but even that's been a struggle for that 24 team in recent months. So we'll just have to wait and see what happens. But I don't see Byron fighting for the lead in the closing laps with somebody like a Joey Logano again this weekend. He could prove me wrong, though. We'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, William Byron's that driver that I think it's the other two Hendrick cars. I mean, we talk a lot about how Chase Elliott and Kyle Larson are dominant, and then William Byron and Alex Bowman. It's just like you never know what's going to happen with them. And to answer the question, I do not expect William Byron to be in contention at all during this race. And I think he's very lucky to be so high in the playoff points with his 2 wins early in the season, because Darlington is statistically one of his worst tracks. He's competed in 27 tracks on the NASCAR Cup Series circuit. I believe Darlington's his 20th best average, which is not good by any stretch of the imagination. However, he did win at Atlanta. Atlanta was his 21st best track. And coming up, we have Bristol in 2 weeks, which is 2 weeks, which is the cutoff race. Doesn't do well there, only like 19th best. However, I think if Byron stops his struggles, it's going to be next week at Kansas. Kansas is his 3rd statistically best track. He has his most top 10s in the Cup Series at Kansas. I think Byron, if he is going to want to stay in contention in this playoffs and make it even past the round of 12, I think he needs to win at Kansas, but I don't see him doing it this week at all. I think his struggles will continue. I think all of Hendrick Motorsports, at least the latter half, so the 24 and 48, because we've seen, I remember, I compare William Byron's season this year to Alex Bowman's last year. Like, Bowman had 4 wins last year. 3 of them were in the regular season. But it was like, it was either he was winning the race or he was nowhere near contention. And that's what we have seen from Byron. He won too early on, and then it's like, oh, wow, Byron finished. So, I mean, he's a great, talented driver, obviously, Xfinity champion. But I see his struggles continue, and I think they will continue for the rest of the season unless he wins Kansas next week. And I think he's one of the best drivers at Kansas. I'd be very shocked if Byron doesn't finish in the top 5 at Kansas. That's my bold prediction. But for this week at Darlington, I don't see Byron getting it done at all.
Yeah, I totally agree with you guys. I don't see William Byron making a quick turnaround, but certainly if you look at his race in the spring, you have to be encouraged at least a little bit by Darlington because he very well could have won that race, but unfortunately, contact with Joey Logano ended that, and since then we haven't really seen William Byron in contention for the win. It's really crazy how half of Hendrick Motorsports is doing well, and then the other half, is just really struggling. And I really think it's always funny how Alex Bowman always seems to win at the most random moments. So that probably means Alex Bowman's going to win the Southern 500. But all in all, Hendrick Motorsports, they really need to get that second half of the team running a lot better. But I guess the big question is it too late to get the 24 and the 48 matching the speed of the 9 and the 5? But William Byron, you certainly have to feel somewhat confident considering how he ran in the spring, but based on how they've been running basically the entire summer, it's certainly been demoralizing because we certainly want to be a lot closer to Chase Elliott and Kyle Larson. In terms of performance in the Darlington Spring race, was a race of attrition, 9 cautions, only 23 out of the 36 starters finished. It was a day race, hot and slick. The cars were on the edge, plus the drivers were still in the early days of figuring out this new car. But the Southern 500 transitions from day to night, a slightly longer event with an additional 100 miles. So the drivers will have to pace themselves. It's a long race, keeping up with the changing track conditions and limit mistakes on pit road and avoid the infamous Darlington Stripe from the lady in black on a track that's too tough to tame. With the drivers having a better understanding of how the cars drive now, do you think we'll see fewer or more cautions than the spring race?
I think we're going to see fewer cautions. Yeah, the race starts in the daytime and ends at night. But we've had this car now for, a while. So these drivers know what to expect here at Darlington. So I think we're going to see fewer cautions tomorrow night. So it's going to be a really good race to kick off the playoff in the NASCAR Cup Series.
I think we'll see fewer cautions, and I think there's a couple of reasons for that. Number one, like you mentioned, Kobe, it's a different kind of race where you have to pace yourself. It's a little bit longer than the spring race was. But I also think, based on what happened last week at Daytona, with so many drivers getting caught up in accidents, talking about how hard the hits were. I mean, Denny Hamlin was even supposed to run the Xfinity race today. He ended up pulling out because he was so sore from what happened at Daytona. And then you got to think of what's happening to his driver right now, Kurt Busch, and the situation he's going through. I think drivers are just going to be a little bit more calm and not risk-taking this weekend, especially considering we do have one more super speedway to go this season where we could see some hard hits again. I think for a variety of reasons, it's probably going to be a little bit more tame than it was in the spring. And of course, we have a better understanding of the car now, a little bit, drivers do. So I think it's all going to factor in and add up to fewer cautions.
My internet's acting really crazy right now, so it's a little slow, but we'll do the best we can here. But I do expect we'll probably see a much cleaner race this time around, because earlier in the year the drivers were really just coming up to speed with the cars, and they have a lot of data now, and it's really interesting because around that time we were talking about it, the team's been worried about having a complete part shortage, but I guess that has kind of sorted itself out throughout the course of the season, because I haven't seen any concerns about the team. I'm more concerned about the safety of the cars now, and I'm sure that's going to be an ongoing discussion. Drivers talked a lot about the safety of the cars on the media day, and they definitely want to see changes because these hits are a lot harder now, and we'll continue having that discussion well into the future. But it should certainly be an interesting race to see which drivers are going to put themselves in the right position to take home a crown jewel victory. And last week at Daytona, Austin Dillon survived the mayhem to get the win and secure his playoff spot. Since Dillon hasn't been a consistent weekly contender, a lot of people are predicting that he won't even advance out of the round of 16. However, we've seen drivers win and ride the momentum to get on a hot streak. Darlington's a good track for Austin Dillon. He finished runner-up in the 2020 Southern 500. He got a top 10 in the most recent spring race here. Do you see Austin Dillon getting another top 10?
You know, I'm going to say, yeah. I think Austin Dillon, coming off that win at Daytona, I think he has a lot of momentum on his side. So, Austin, like you mentioned, Kobe, he finished second in the 2020 Southern 500. Does Austin Dillon get a top 10 tomorrow night at Darlington? Yes, he does.
I think at the end of the day, it's all about surviving, as we've seen from like last weekend. It's like Austin Dillon's more than capable of surviving. And I think he's statistically, like, I bring a lot of statistics into the show. Austin Dillon's, if you consider the last 7 races that have been run since February of 19, all the drivers that have competed in 5 of them, I'm going to take Larson out since of the suspension, only competing 4. Austin Dillon has the 5th best average in the NASCAR Cup Series circuit at this track, including 7 top 20s and 5 top 10s. So to answer the question, yes, I think Austin Dillon can get it done. And I want to apologize to him for, I think we all disrespected him a little bit last weekend. We were all riding the 23 train and maybe Ryan Blaney along those lines about who's going to win at Talladega or Daytona. I'm sorry, wrong super speedway. And Austin Dillon was like, okay, let me hold my reality show here. And he got it done. So I wouldn't be surprised if he gets a top 10. I don't see him advancing, though. But I think this is going to be the track where he shows up and really continues that momentum. So Austin Dillon, top 10. I can't guarantee it, but I am sure he's going to do it. So
I know one thing, though. I'm sure Austin Dillon is certainly getting a lot of great content for his show, Life in the Fast Lane. I think that's what it's called. Seen a few episodes, I have to say, is quite interesting. And another show that's coming on, Race for Championship. A lot of people had a lot of great things to say about that. Really looking forward to checking that out for myself. But yeah, I could certainly see Austin Dillon getting another top 10 finish at Darlington, one of his best racetracks. Just won last week at Daytona, can use that momentum. RCR is really excited to have both of their Chevrolets into the playoffs, and we'll see how far they can do. I'm sure a lot of people have Tyler Reddick. Pennsylvania is going much deeper in the playoffs as Austin Dillon. Austin Dillon can use fuel from all the people who think that he's going to be an easy X to not advance to the round of 12 and be like, I'm going to go out there and prove them wrong. And it's crazy because in 2020, A lot of people didn't expect him to be in contention for the win, and here he comes, making a late race charge. If he had like maybe 2 or 3 more laps, it looked like Austin Dillon might have won the Southern 500 that year. And if he brings that same mentality to the race tomorrow night on Sunday night in prime time, watch out, because Austin Dillon might be ready to play spoiler. And now a bit of silly season news from the week. Kyle Busch spoke to the reporters on Playoff Media Day about his future. Busch says he's weighing multiple offers and expects to make a decision within the next 7 to 10 days. So we may be getting some major breaking news regarding Kyle Busch's future. It's imminent. According to Adam Stern from the Sports Business Journal, there are 3 likely destinations for Kyle Busch, and it doesn't include Joe Gibbs Racing. Stern says Busch may sign with 2311 Racing to remain in the Toyota family, or there could potentially be a reunion in the making with Chevrolet potentially joining Colic Racing, or this is one that really surprised me, Richard Childress Racing. And starting with you, Matthew, on this question, whether he stays with JGR somehow or goes elsewhere, will an official announcement still be too big of a distraction for Busch to make a deep playoff run, or could we see a surprise early playoff exit from him?
I don't think it's going to be a distraction at all. I mean, I think we've seen Kyle Busch defy odds multiple times. I mean, the man broke his leg and still came back and dominated and won a championship. Could you imagine the pressure was on him during that situation? So I don't see this like making any sort of factor whatsoever in his playoff run. I'm fully capable of Kyle Busch can be the guy who can either be a first round exit or he's had a very unpredictable season this year, though. Had that long stretch without finishing a top 10 and then getting disqualified at Pocono. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't think Kyle Busch knows what's going to happen right now. I loved his interview, though, whether it was 18%, 23%, 45%, 16, 8, 3, whatever he kept saying. I think you got to love that sense of humor coming from a guy who's been around the sport this long. He's been with Joe Gibbs Racing. I was like 6 or 7 years old. So, I mean, he's been there a while. It's going to be a real change, I think. I don't know where I would see him going. I don't know if Toyota is going to spend all the money. I mean, if you want him at 2311, he'll probably replace his brother, because Denny Hamlin said he doesn't really want to move to a 3-car, especially in the current NASCAR system with the charter and everything going on. But if Toyota had all that money to throw at Kyle Busch to keep him in a Toyota, I don't see why he wouldn't return to Joe Gibbs Racing. Colic Racing's definitely that one. They have a driver announcement coming up on October 5th, I believe it is. That's obviously not on that timetable that Kyle Busch is going to be making his decision. But you never know. I mean, Kyle Busch could randomly right now, just while we're talking right now, just tweet something out. Be like, oh, I'm going to 2311. I'm going to Colic. I'm going to RCR. I'm going to Rick Ware Racing. I could imagine if that happened. That would blow up all of NASCAR Twitter. But I don't think this is going to be a distraction weighing on it. Obviously, his future, his truck team's future, Brexton's future coming into the sport. And gosh, that's going to be like 8 years now. But so nonetheless, I don't think it's going to be a distraction whatsoever. But this is probably the most anticipated decision in NASCAR free agency we have seen over the past decade at least.
I don't think it's going to be a distraction, but I still don't see Kyle Busch making the championship for this year just based on his results. He only has 1 win this season. It came at the Bristol Dirt Track, and you can argue that should have potentially been Tyler Reddick's win. He kind of got lucky and, dare I say, backed into one shortly after he made some comments similarly about Alex Bowman there. But I just think Kyle got off to a very strong start to the season, and then, ironically, around the same time that these free agency Gibbs sponsor discussions began, I just feel like we've seen a downturn. Like you mentioned, Matthew, he had that long stretch. I think it was 8 consecutive races where he didn't finish in the top 10. Of course, Pocono's included in that, where he crossed the line in second, but had that finish taken away with the disqualifications. So, Kyle can insist it's not a distraction. I don't necessarily disagree with that. I don't think it's been too much of a distraction for him. I just think Toyota has been very hot and cold this year, and Kyle Busch has, kind of gotten caught up in that as well with the 18 team. So I just don't see him making a deep playoff run like he has in the past. Now, I don't think he's going to be in the first 4 out. I know it's the next question. We'll get to that in just a minute here. But I also don't think Kyle Busch is going to go all the way and have a championship send-off if this is indeed his final season in the 18 car of Joe Gibbs Racing.
Yes, and it's really crazy to think that this might be Kyle Busch's final season in an 18 car. Like Matthew said, he was just a little kid when Kyle Busch first joined Gibbs Racing after leaving Hendrick Motorsports, and when Kyle Busch joined Gibbs, I was just in elementary school. I think I might have been like 8 years old or something like that. So pretty much most of my lifetime, I've seen Kyle Busch in the 18 car. Whenever you think about the number 18, you think about Kyle Busch. So it's really hard to believe that he could be sporting a new number next year. And I agree with you guys. I don't think it's really going to be too big of a distraction. But if he's moving on, it could certainly be a lot of sadness, because we all know this sport is all about relationships and the people that you get to know and the people that who become your friends over time. So all of the people that he's gotten close with at Joe Gibbs Racing, had a lot of success with, it's certainly going to be emotional, leaving all those people behind, and especially seeing how could potentially affect his NASCAR Truck Series program with KBM. We know TRD does not want to lose that, because that's a great place to put all their young development drivers. So it would be devastating for Toyota to lose Kyle Busch. So very well could see him, staying in the family with 2311 Racing, especially with his brother Kurt Busch's future way up in the air right now. Don't know if he's going to be able to return to racing at some point, or he's going to be forced to retire just a little bit early. But that would be an easy way for Toyota to keep KBM in the family, have him at 2311 Racing. But Kaulig Racing, that would be a huge signing if Kaulig could get Kyle Busch, because Kaulig's trying to get their Cup program more competitive week in and week out. And if you have a driver like Kyle Busch building up your program, that could mean long-term success for Kaulig. But the big question about Kyle Busch joining Kaulig, is he willing to potentially, struggle for a little bit before that team can get better? I know Justin Haley had a really good race at Darlington. I believe he finished in the top 5 in the spring race. Really, that was a really exciting race for Kaulig. And then AJ Allmendinger jumps in on the road courses and, in contention for the win often. But is Kyle Busch willing to go through those growing pains at this stage in his career and try to help a team potentially become a powerhouse organization? And I'm not so sure, because we know when Kyle Busch finished second, he gets really upset because he wants to win. But how's he going to react if he's finishing like 19th, 20th, 21st every single week? And Richard Childress racing, this one really caught me by surprise. And if Kurt Busch is going to step down because of his health issues, it makes me wonder if 2311 could potentially buy out Tyler Reddick's contract and bring him over to 2311 a year earlier and put Kyle Busch in the 8 in RCR. So there's a lot of silly season things that we're going to have to figure out throughout the next several months. And it's certainly going to be interesting to see how all of this falls into place. And now we're going to be making our own predictions on the 4 drivers who we think won't advance out of the round of 16. And starting with Ben, which 4 drivers will see their championship hopes in after the Bristol cutoff race?
Well, I talked about William Byron. I just think he hasn't been running strong enough, and certainly not as strong as he was at the start of the season. So I'm going to go with Byron. You got a couple of playoff rookies in this field here. Chase Briscoe, Austin Cindric. I just don't know if their experience level might provide them with a bit of a disadvantage here. They've never been in this position before, in the Cup Series at least. So I think, it wouldn't be unreasonable to think that they might be a first-round exit. And I know he's got the momentum with the win last weekend as well. But Austin Dillon, RCR, I just don't know that they have the performance right now to be able to sustain making a playoff run. So I'm going to go with Cindric, Briscoe, Byron, and Dillon as my first 4 out. Usually, with how my predictions go, that means one of them's probably going to win tomorrow and prove me wrong right away. But those are my first 4 out at this point, based on what I've seen so far this season.
Well, I'll agree with Austin Dillon. I think Austin Cindric. I think Alex Bowman's not gonna make it past Bristol. And in my 4th driver, I'm gonna say William Byron. Somehow the 24-48 haven't lived up to their standards like we've seen in the past with Jeff Gordon, Jimmy Johnson. So Austin Dillon, Austin Cindric, Alex Bowman, William Byron.
So far, so good here. At least I don't have the exact 4 as both you, Ben, and Adam, and I don't know about Kobe yet. But my 4, I'm going to agree. I think Austin Dillon doesn't get in. I don't think Bowman goes anywhere. But you never know, like Ben was saying earlier, Bowman could easily win like 3 races for the rest of the season. They'd be like statistically at the point to make the final 4. And then I don't think Austin. It's going to be tough. It's tough between Cindric and Suarez. Obviously, Suarez having the failing inspection 3 times and have to start the race essentially a lap down. But I'm going to say Cindric instead, and I'm not going to say Byron because I did pick Byron to hit the final 4 a couple years ago when he got out very early. So I don't know how I feel about picking him, but I think he's so far in the standings where he's 5th right now with all the playoff points he accumulated that I think he makes it past this round, especially with Kansas on the schedule. I think it's going to be Briscoe, though. You haven't really seen much of Briscoe either this past stretch. I mean, he did very well earlier in the season. We were all like, he's going to win. Finally won, and then he just did this, stopped really competing in the top 5. So, yeah, I'm going to say Austin Dillon. I say Alex Bowman, Chase Briscoe, and Austin Cindric are going to be my first 4 out. But like Ben said earlier, they might win the next 3 races, the 3 guys that we say. So I don't know what's going to happen. That's what's fun about the playoff system. Very unpredictable. So we'll see.
Yeah, playoffs can be quite unpredictable. And my first 4 out, I think Austin Dillon is obviously the easiest choice. He barely made it into the playoffs to begin with. Austin Dillon's going to need to have some remarkable consistency if he wants to get into the round of 12. I think Alex Bowman's going to be out as well. Haven't really seen a lot of strong runs out of the 48 this year, so he's certainly going to need to step up his game if he wants to advance. And my next one out, I'm actually going to say Daniel Suarez from Trackhouse Race. I know Trackhouse has been looking really strong this year, but I'm wondering if they possibly peaked too soon because Trackhouse started off strong, but they've kind of gone cold lately with some disappointing finishes. Disappointing things happen to them during the race. So I think when you bring that into the equation, I think Daniel Suarez won't advance out of the round of 16. And the other one, I agree with what you said, Matthew, but I think Chase Briscoe as well. I expected Chase Briscoe to be just a tad bit stronger this year, and I think he's certainly going to need to step up his game if he wants to advance. Otherwise, it's going to be an early exit for Briscoe in his playoff debut.
And now it's time for everybody's favorite game here at Grid Network. Pick a winner and use the hashtag pick a winner on social media to see your picks. That being said, it's time that we all make some picks. So let's go. First up, F1 is at the legendary Zandvoort circuit in the Netherlands. Max Verstappen's on poles in front of his home country fans. So, Kobe, does Max Verstappen turn a pole into a victory tomorrow and make all those fans go absolutely nuts?
Unless he has a mechanical failure, I think it's going to be a cakewalk for Max Verstappen. I think he's gonna dominate the race, go to victory lane in the Dutch Grand Prix, and it's gonna be all over from there.
I'm gonna be different just because I started this late and I'm so far behind. I don't have any points. I'm just going to base off that Verstappen has something go wrong. I think we're gonna see something we haven't seen since 2018 in Formula 2. And that's a George Russell victory. The only guy who's finished in the top 5 every single race besides the one where he retired to go check on a guy. So I'm saying if it's going to be Mercedes, I picked Sir Lewis Hamilton last week. Obviously, turn 1 made that prediction nullify. I'm going to say George Russell. I think he could possibly get it done, only if something happens to Verstappen,
though. Ben, I think you're muted.
Sorry, guys. I knew I was going to do that. I had to step out for a second and I muted myself so that there wouldn't be any background noise. So I apologize. But I'm with you, Kobe. It is going to be an absolute cakewalk for Max Verstappen and Red Bull Racing. They're going to have the energy of the home crowd surrounding them. Ferrari, what we've seen from them the last few races and all throughout this season, I don't see them taking the fight to Red Bull. Certainly not this track. under these circumstances. So the only thing stopping Verstappen is going to be an engine failure or mechanical issue. He's going to win easily tomorrow. And hopefully we get a good race like Josh was predicting and get some action in the middle of the field.
That answers my. There you go. I'm wearing orange. I got to go with Max Verstappen in front of some country fans. I mean, if something were to happen to him tomorrow, that crowd is going to be, well, I'm glad I'm here in the United States and not Zandvoort. So, with that being said, next up, MotoGP is at the San Marino Grand Prix this weekend. So, Kobe, who wins the San Marino Grand Prix tomorrow?
And despite getting a 3-place grid penalty, I don't think it's going to matter. Ultimately, in the end, I think Pecco Bagnaia is still going to be riding a hot streak. He's going to get another victory and try to inch his way closer to catching Fabio Quartararo in the championship. I know Pecco's been on a hot streak lately, but Fabio's had a really consistent first half of the season. We'll see if consistency is able to prevail, but if Pecco keeps on winning, it might start to get closer for that MotoGP World Championship.
I will defer to the expertise of Julia and some of our other MotoGP analysts here, but I think I'm just going to go with the theme of the pole sitter. I think Jack Miller gets the job done over in MotoGP. That's going to be my pick of winner for that series.
Even though I'm trying to catch Kobe, I'm also going to go with Pecco Bagnaia to get the job done tomorrow in San Marino. And lastly, the NASCAR Cup Series is at historic Darlington Raceway as we kick off round 1 of the playoffs. It's the Cookout 7500, a crown jewel event. I talked about some of the legends that have won this race earlier. So, Kobe, who adds to the list of legends who have won this race tomorrow night?
Well, Adam, it's crazy because last week he just barely made it into the playoffs, but this week I think he's going to win and just advance to the round of 12 just like that. I think the driver to number 12 is going to get it done. Ryan Blaney's going to win the Cookout Southern 500.
I'm going to stick within the Team Penske family. I'm going to say Joey Logano sweeps Darlington this season and he will win the Southern 500 in NASCAR tomorrow.
I'm going to stick with the same manufacturer, but I'm going to go a little different route. I was going to go Ryan Blaney. I think he's going to just rip through this field. But I'm going to go with the guy who has 7 top 10s in the last 7 races here and 6 top 5s, 2 wins. I think the closer, Kevin Harvick, with a 3.4 average finish here in the last 7 races. I don't see why Kevin Harvick can't get it done in this car.
His dad won here in 1985 and won $1 million. By winning 3 of the Crown Jewel races that year. Yeah. So if Bill Elliott can do it then, tomorrow night, his son, Chase Elliott, will get the job done and join his dad as a winner of the Cookout Southern 500.
Yeah, unfortunately, we're out of time for today. So please want to remind all of our viewers to please like and subscribe to GRIDnet. We're here on YouTube. You can follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. We encourage you to take 5 minutes after our show and consider joining our Patreon. Invest in GRIDnet to keep us on the air well into the future. Click the link to buy me a coffee in the video description below, and you can buy a drink for your favorite on-air talent here at GRIDnet. Big thank you to Edward Hunter from formerly E-Zone, Amber and Zachary for buying us one. We truly appreciate it. Any amount will help us grow on our motorsports media outlet. Visit public.com, also known as the stock market social media home. The link or referral code GRIDnet gives you $5 to invest immediately. And then public.com allows you to connect with your friends. You can make new friends and use tools to learn how to properly invest in the stock market. And looking at our schedule the next couple of days, we're going to be very, very busy. Tomorrow at noon Eastern, we'll have a special edition of Grid Live Pre-Race, getting you ready for the NTT IndyCar Series, Grand Prix of Portland. Joe Samniego's on site this weekend at Portland International Raceway, providing interviews and content that you can see across all of our social media pages, especially here on YouTube. Be sure to check out our website as well, gridranking.com, for new articles throughout the race and weekend at PIR. Grid Live Wrap-Up will take place on Monday, Labor Day at noon Eastern, due to the NASCAR Cup Series Cookout Southern 500 at Darlington Raceway ending late on Sunday night. Then Grid Live Encore later on Monday night with an action-packed weekend. Full recap of Formula 2 and Formula 3 at Zandvoort, Indy Lights and ARCA West at Portland, more ARCA action on the dirt at the DuQuoin State Fairgrounds, and NASCAR Xfinity at Darlington. So a lot of racing happening all over the world this weekend. For Julia, Adam, Ben, Josh, and Matthew, I'm Kobe Lambert from the Podium Finish. Thank you all for watching and enjoy the races.
Don't be an anonymous investor. Join the stock market social media platform public.com. Invest any amount of money and share with friends and new friends. Discover new opportunities such as new companies and potential business partners, and useful tools for beginners, and share your experience with friends on public.com. Link in the video description gets you $5 for being a Grid Network viewer. Use the referral code GRIDnet for your free $5 to invest. Start investing and networking on public.com.